that have to be done. All right, everybody, welcome to the Sunday live stream. And we are welcomed as ever with Jerry V. Hall. Jerry, how's everything in Costa Rica?
Incredible. Great weather, beautiful country, great attitude. What more could you want?
No, there's nothing more you can want. It's a great life. And this is the kind of life that you want to. I know we talk about crypto, digital assets in the channel. We talk about Bitcoin. But remember, Bitcoin is freedom. And if you're not using it for freedom, then what are you really using it for? So let's just get into today's show. First of all, if you haven't followed Jerry V. Hall, what are you doing with your life? There's a link in the description. You can follow Jerry over there on X, see what he's doing. Looks like got some new business ventures that are popping off pretty soon, Jerry, looking pretty good. We can talk about that in a bit. But today we're going to talk about a couple of things. One is yesterday we spent pretty heavy. We talked about Bitcoin. And I want to talk about a little bit more of altcoins. But before we get into that, here's some good news for everybody to munch on. The United States government and the current administration under Donald J. Trump just struck a deal, trade relations with China. Now, we talked about this yesterday, actually. And this was actually from yesterday, November 1st. Today's the 2nd, right? Am I off? Yes. All right, good deal. But it looks like there's some more details that are coming out, which are covered expressly well by the Kobayashi letter. And they say this is the biggest de-escalation under the new U.S.-China trade deal. President Trump made a huge agreement with China. Huge. But it was both ways, actually. I think both sides may have blinked. Some might say yes, some might say no, but it's all good, and hopefully our bags will pump. China will suspend all retaliatory tariffs announced since March 4th, and China will suspend or remove all retaliatory non-tariff countermeasures taken since March 4th. This is not getting enough attention, and it looks like Trump is going to downgrade that as well as to like a 45% tariff. So these are good news. I like where things are going. But as a reminder, this could all be undone by a simple tweet tomorrow. So we'll see how it goes. Jerry, what's your thoughts on this? You think this is going to last? It's going to be like, this is great until somebody posts something goofy on...
Okay, so we've got a couple more years of the Trump administration. They're famous for wanting to negotiate or renegotiate new deal all the time. So with that being said, my honest thought is that this will probably hold for a while, and there's only positive outcomes for the market that really that counts upon stability, right? When we have economic trade stability, markets tend to be more optimistic. It's when fear or uncertainty comes into the markets that we become pessimistic as a whole. So I think this is net positive for us, not just in the capital market structure on Wall Street, but in the crypto space as well.
I hope so. I hope things start to get a little momentum. We've been chopping kind of sideways, and it's been very kind of dull for people in the markets. Now, if you're in TradFi and you go up 0.5%, you're like, I can retire. But for us, not a big deal. But we'll see what happens moving forward. So that is great news. We're going in the right direction, hopefully. And then the top of the terror that are tariffs can actually get settled, and we can move forward, and we can deal with the other issues that are going on throughout the world and climb that wall of worry like Ben talks about. But we'll see how it goes. But today, I just want to talk about sentiment and where things are going. And I put this poll out yesterday. And I just asked the simple question, like, where does everybody see we're going? Is this like, and we talked about this yesterday as well, is this market done for? And we'll see in 4 years. If you believe in the 4-year cycles are still happening, I personally believe they are still intact, and we'll see what happens in Q2. But the wisdom of the crowd says I am wrong at 11%, as they say that cycle is not over, and Q2, cycle not over, Q2 in place, should be Q4. And a lot of people are saying that the winner is the cycle is extended to 2026 and maybe even a super cycle. But it's in between the cycle is extended or the cycle's over. And it's either it's like a 45-35 split. And we'll see how it goes. But I got to tell you, things are weird. This has been the strangest run up so far. And none of these indicators have hit. Not one hit this whole entire time. These are the top 30 that you take a look at. Now, they've come close. You can see the progress to it. But this is everything from Pi cycle top, well, multiple, Bitcoin, ETF to Bitcoin ratio, MVRVZ score. I mean, look at these scores. I think the only one that came out the highest was either the Bitcoin long-term holder supply, that's us, or Bitcoin dominance, because of course money is flowing back into Bitcoin. And you can see what else is good. Bitcoin trend indicator, everything that has to do with Bitcoin is doing well. Outside of that, not so well. And it's paltry at best. But the reason I want to talk about just alts was a couple of comments that I got from yesterday's show. One was from Jeto Kuba. Nailed it. And he says, look, Rob, no one gives an S about Bitcoin. They're probably not going to sell it anyway. The alts, man. If you can't offer hope for altcoins, it's no new information. Everyone knows Bitcoin's history. And he was right. You know, we talked a lot about from the bottom to the return on investment. We talk about halving to the current. We talk about the halving or the all-time high hitting before the current halving and everything in between. And of course, monthly returns. So I think it's best that we talk about alts. And before we do, I'd like to say that if any of this like gets you a little to hyperventilate or maybe have some heart palpitations as we talk about things that aren't perfect or hopium, this probably isn't the channel for you. And you probably should step away now, because I can see it in the comment section that some people got a little bit too far over their skis. So if this is you, I'd like you to leave the channel and don't watch anything else, because this just stresses you out. So what's the point? If you're okay with moving forward, let's take it a step at a time. First of all, this is from Charlie Baleo, and he made a good point, which is, look, bull markets last a heck of a lot longer than bear markets. Bear markets will come. They're a natural evolution, a natural cycle. But just remember that speaking historically, these are the numbers that we have. And Jared, before I start to like pull out Ethereum data, what's your thoughts on this as far as bull versus bear markets? And of course, and then talk about the mental aspect of, of investing.
It's amazing. Like it's a matter of perspective. If you were holding the number 1026 token for the last 18 months, the word bull never entered your perception.
True.
You know what I mean? You've just been kicked in the teeth for the last 18 months. If you're holding Bitcoin, you've seen 100+% growth. I mean, that's a wonderful, you know, relative to the S&P. Maybe not in normal crypto standards, 100% a year is not that big a deal. But you know, to somebody who's been investing in the S&P, 100% is incredible. So it's really a matter of perspective, right? I tend to agree with Charlie here. In the span of time that I've been in markets deeply, I can attest to gradual step-ups over time are more common than extended decreases.
Right.
And so it's really a matter of can you celebrate 1%, 2% increase a month? I can. But if you can't, then you're probably going to be way disappointed. Yeah,
these are a good point. And you know what? You talking about that, we were going to talk about, you know, the return on investments over time. But by you saying that one comment where you said like, hey, if you're investing in the 1,000, blah, 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 your return is, you know, it's minimal, or you're like totally in the hole.
Unless you were one of those guys that put it all in Zcash 90 days ago. You know, I mean, you know what I mean? It's a real mixed bag of tricks. It's a real gamble. The farther you get away from Bitcoin in this space, in the crypto space, the farther you get away from Bitcoin, the greater the boom or bust percentage will be.
Yeah, and that's, you know, that'll lead up to this one when we take a look at declines as far as how that's going. But before we do that, you know, like just like we were saying about like altcoins, I want to show this one. It's called Does It Bleed? And it's pretty interesting to see, because like people say, well, where's my bull market? Where's my bull market? What the hell is going on? And I can understand it, but what I like to do is like take a step back and go, okay, well, it didn't go up 500%. Okay, you got me on that one. That is for sure. But if we take a look at Does It Bleed? I like this one because you can compare the standard, which let's put that as Bitcoin, shall we? apply. And the bleeder, well, we can't just say Bitcoin to Bitcoin, it makes no sense. We'll do it with Ethereum and apply. So if we can take a look here, I don't want you to focus too much on this. I want you to focus over here. Does it bleed? Well, over a day, week, and a month, yes. You would have just been better investing in Bitcoin. 3 months and 6 months, you'd be better on Ethereum. But then this is where it gets kind of disheartening. 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 4 year, you would have been much better investing into Bitcoin, especially over a year. Look at that, -2%, 2 year, -32, 53%, 51. But outside of that, 5, 6, and 7, look at those returns, not the greatest. The only way it makes sense for Ethereum is if you were 10 years ago and you invested into it. And that's the only way you would beat Bitcoin. Pretty crazy, huh? Now take a look at this. Let's take a look at let's just take some alts and see how people would do against it. XRP. And we can see that over a day to 3 months, you're sucking. That's pretty much how it is. But if you were in 6 months or a year ago, or 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago, you're up between 30 and 208% just by investing in the XRP. So I know and then let me just ask everybody in the chats, who would like to see another altcoin, or should we just move on to just taking a look at Ethereum over time? Because I think when we take a look at some of these, you can realize that there is some bull run. There's a bull run happening somewhere. Maybe it's just not in your neck of the woods. And it's the same thing with traditional stocks, crypto. It doesn't really matter. Even real estate. So we'll see. All right. Turpy Time says ADA. That's one of me and Jerry's soft spots. So let's take a look. Let's take a look at Cardano. See how he done. Standard, the bleeder. Let me just type it in. There we go. That's way faster. Okay, brace yourselves. Not really good. Sorry, Cardano, you're sucking. And not only that, but the only way that you're up is if you were 1 year ago, you're up a measly 8.4%. That's sad.
Or those early guys that got in at the token generation event, right? 8 years ago.
8 years ago, you're up 72%. Who is holding it that long? I don't know.
Charles.
No, you know Charles.
Five other people at IOHK or IO. Input up.
That's it. Yeah, and then look at it. Maybe 1 year. So yeah, Cardano is a huge laggard, and unless they get things together, it's not going to change. How about this one? Because if you're going to talk about Cardano, you got to talk about their arch nemesis, Solana. And for as good as it was, 1 day, week, and month, not so great. 3 months and 6 months, is it worth 10% to gamble? I guess 1 year you're down 30%. 2 years you're up 45%, which congratulations, especially when it went down to I remember when it was around $10, $9. But then 3 years, 4 years, and the only way that you're up right now is if you bought 5 years ago and you held and held and held and held and held and held. Maybe took some profit in 2021, but yeah, it's the early ones that are showing the resolve. So, altcoins, this is just the data that we have, unfortunately. So let's just move forward a little bit. And I want you to think about that moving forward, because what if, I guess this is come back to another question, which would be, if we do go into a recession, is everybody just I'm going to ask a question. If we do go into recession, is everybody going to bail and just say, I don't want to do any more investing, that's it? Or would you do something like, maybe I will look a little bit harder at Bitcoin and maybe not go what Jerry talked about, which was, invest in the 1,000, So yeah. And that's it. Yes. Dean Clark says, do you know your audience? I'm not for sure. I don't know you, Dean. I know some of the people here. I know Aristotle Plato. I know Ashley Jagger. I know A1, Meme, and JH, and Lone Wolf Mumbo, and Ashley Jagger, and Echo Lee. And yes, I know most of you. I don't know you per se, but if you mean like, do you know your audience? Why don't you give us some more hopium? I'm not here for that. I'm here to tell you the truth. And that's just what it is. So moving forward, let's take a look at the ROI. So this October, if we take a look at Bitcoin, actually, before I go on, I should ask you, Jerry, was I a little too harsh? Was I a little too tough on the beef?
I don't think you were harsh at all. You know what this?
I think I was a little harsh. I'm sorry.
I don't think you were harsh at all. What this reminds me of, and I remember this so vividly, as the internet came into prominence and the building on the internet started, right? When we transitioned from like Netscape and AWL trying to create like these intranet type of worlds to an open internet, and companies started to build on it. It reminds me a lot of the last 5 years in crypto, where company upon company upon company was bringing a use case to this new technology and saying, hey, we're going to solve these problems. These are the problems we're going to solve. These are big problems. And everybody had a .com. And there was so much money flooding into the .com world that even, let's put it this way, poorly run companies, regardless of how good their idea was, were getting money. We're getting funding. And but over a period of time, the cream rose to the top. I'm talking about the Metas. I'm talking about Microsoft and Amazon and Apple and these companies that we know today to be the big winners of the .com wars. You can count on your hands those companies, but you would be hard pressed to name, 100 from back then, but there were thousands globally, right? And so I think the big shakeout is happening now in this space also. We've gone from this incredible new technology, bringing all this promise and all this innovation with all these problems that we could solve, right? And garnering all this attention and all this capital. And now we're seeing that the wheat gets separated from the shaft, so to speak, right? The cream is rising to the top. And there are a couple of new technologies coming in where we're going to see that same kind of, speculatory explosion, and the wheat will get separated and the cream will rise, and that process will rinse and repeat. And so in blockchain layer ones, we've seen it.
Yeah.
Right. We've seen it's going to happen. So which one of these layer ones are actually going to attract apps or dApps that cater to 1 billion people? I don't know yet, right? We got a couple that have real promise: Ethereum, Bitcoin, Solana, Cardano. There's a few that show the stablecoin chains are showing to be that type of thing. We've got a couple of technologies like AI and the Internet of Things, right? Which are bringing a whole new set of technologies into the thing. Will there be 1,000 of those companies? Absolutely. But we're already starting to see who could garner the most money, who could deploy the most computers, the most hardware, the most electricity, blah, 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 blah. I think those winners will be defined here relatively shortly. And then we'll just go into the matter of growth and scale, just like we did with cell phones, just like we did with the internet. Remember how many cell phone companies there used to be?
I do.
There were all these Nokia, Motorola, blah, 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 blah. The two largest phone manufacturers on the planet right now are Samsung and Apple. And then there's a couple little ones that follow, but they're nowhere near the market share of those two large ones. I think we're going to see the same thing play out in this market, because it's the science of markets, not necessarily the particular science of the technology that we're talking about.
Yeah. And it's a great point, because as we move forward and we get all these different blockchain companies coming in, these new altcoins or altcoins that are just right around, some are going to be winners. And that's what I'm trying to talk about today, is that there's going to be some that are going to absolutely crush it. And it's going to absorb the liquidity in all the 1,279 liquidity of that altcoin that does absolutely nothing, or doesn't, not that it doesn't do anything, nothing, it just didn't have any traction. And for whatever reason, it just didn't get picked up by the big players, and they like batted. I always look at it like this. I always think the future is multi-chain, and if it's not multi-chain, it's these bigger chains buying up the smaller ones, absorbing their developers, and moving forward with their connections. And I think that is something that will play out. I think we're getting at that time, like Jerry put it perfectly, the cream is rising to the top. And I think that's what it is. When people say, when the hell is altcoin season? Because everything's supposed to blow up. No. Now it gets tougher. This isn't just straight up speculation all day long, even though speculation is what moves the market, let's be honest. It has to come down to which ones are the ones that are winning, which are the ones that are forming those connections, and which ones that are actually being used and utilized and have a future. And that's where it comes down to doing the research. And it's tough, and it's not easy. And Tha Gambler says this, Cardano is the only altcoin that will skyrocket. And maybe that is true. Maybe that's true. I'm not here to say like all altcoins are going to suck. Like I said, some are going to do well. And let's talk about the ones that I think can do great. And then as the new ones come in, we'll talk about those. But today, just talking about ETH. I just wanted to show some data points like we'd already talked about. We know, of course, monthly, as far as, monthly returns. October was, what was a good way to say October, Jerry? It used to be Uptober. No-tober?
It used to be October.
Yeah.
I think, it's interesting. We had a rate cut in September.
Yeah.
We had a rate cut in October. And we had a down October.
Yeah.
Interesting. To me, that's interesting. That's a very macro stimulative measure to take. When they reduce the cost to borrow money, it should entice more borrowing.
Yeah, it should.
It should, but it hasn't. And why? That's the question we should answer. Yeah. Why not this time?
Why not this time? Why not is it? Because these are risk-on assets and people are scared. That's pretty much what it comes down to.
Ding, 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 ding. Circling back to the beginning of this particular episode when we talked about global macro elements that can bring stability to markets and that are very, very clear and understandable trade agreements and trust that those trade agreements will be honored. That's the part with Trump. It's tough because he does posture. We'll call it. He does posture a lot.
He does.
He does. He is a multi-posturer.
Yeah, and he's a multi-tweeter or a multi-poster. That's the problem. I tell you, Trump analysis. You don't need TA. You need the real TA. Trump analysis. That's it. So anyhow, so to finish this part up, ETH market cycle bottom return investment. Just know that it looks like there are a little bit of an elongated cycle. The first cycle, and this is back in 2011, 2012. Or excuse me, that's not that right. 2018 from the cycle bottom, which is 2015, to the top, which again ETH topped in 2018. I believe it was January right here. Bitcoin topped in December 17th, 2017. So just remember that when Bitcoin tops, and you'll see this actually time and time again, 2017 and 2021, Bitcoin will top and then it'll flow to the altcoins and then off you go. And this is why the first cycle for Ethereum, it topped in 2018. Second cycle, we topped off in, when is this? November 7th, 2021. And then the last one right now, if we have topped, November 1st. But just know that we're extending this cycle a little bit. And then also, and this is the one I wanted to get to, ETH days since decline, ETH days since gains. What this is showing you is how many days it's been since there's been an 80% drawdown. And just like we took time, it looks like in 2015, there was it looks like 6th of August, 2015, there was a decline of, geez, that's a crazy amount, 80%. And then it took almost 500, well, 1,000 days, and it did it again. And so far, we haven't dropped an 80%. But look at this. 50% declines. What do you see? You see there's a 1, 2, 3, 4, right down here, 5, 6, 7. It was way more volatile. And then ever since 2022, 2023, we've just had 1. So the volatility is going down. That's all this is showing you. Let's take a look at 30%. Same thing. And that's 30%. So volatility, when you see these big ups, you know the volatility is going down. It's the same thing if we invert it. ETH days since 100% gain. Look at this. There was 100% gain. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's insane. 7, 9, 10. And then, of course, now, going 2023, it's been quite some time. So volatility is going down. That makes it boring, but that's just the reality of the situation. Jerry, what's your thoughts on this?
Hey, as these markets mature and the investor base rotates from extremely fickle, short-sighted retail type investment population to a more institutional market segment, you're going to see less of that, not to mention the adoption, right? So as more participants come to play, a larger actual number of hodlers are attracted. So if 5 years ago the ratio was 10 hodlers and 50 traders, well, volatility is going to go all over the place. You get 20 hodlers and 100 traders, the volatility collapses a little bit. You get 1,000 hodlers and 5,000 traders. The larger number of hodlers you get, and that doesn't matter if it's a hodler like a treasury strategy company or a person like me, holding your assets and not moving them stabilizes a market and compresses volatility. So the larger number of those participants in the marketplace, the less volatile that market will be. And we just call it adoption. It's the adoption. We are gaining more participants in this market than we're losing. That's a adoption curve that we all should want. Now it does screw with the traders, right? Because traders want volatility. An investor like me wants steady growth. We're conflicted in our incentives and our goals there, but we're both participants in the very same market.
Yeah, it's exactly right. We're all participants in the very same market, and we'd like some just steady growth, but we're not going to get it until we settle a few things macro-wise. One of those, of course, is tariffs we just talked about. Another big thing is, and I was saying that, with the government shutdown, in the first couple of weeks, everything was fine. I'm like, it's like government never worked. It was fine. But then as time has gone on, we've seen there's a lot of problems because you can't pay the people that are supposed to be paid because the government is shut down. You can't give U.S. aid to those who actually need that aid because the government is shut down. You can't do any agreements. You can't do much with ETF approvals. You can't really do squat. All you can do is just listen to people squawk on both sides, and all politicians suck. And that's pretty much where we're at right now. So when we get those two things hammered out, maybe things will go up. But right now, it's going to be pretty rocky moving forward. So again, just telling you how I see things. I think me and Jerry are on the same wavelength. But remember, overall, things are looking pretty good. Let's talk about some good stuff. Now, unfortunately, I hit you with the bad stuff in the beginning, but I'll bring you back. So Ethereum, as a reminder, it does have a nice little ETF going on. We'll take a look at some numbers. The supply is tightening, and we'll take a look over. There's a great website, Sound Money. There's tokenization. Larry Fink just talked about how much they're going to be tokenizing assets, and he even said, I need to talk about this more because that's the plan over at BlackRock. Once we get regulatory clarity with the Clarity Act, institutional DeFi growth is going, layer 2 scaling adoption. When we saw this over in Robinhood, as they picked Arbitrum as their layer 2 solution for tokenization of stocks. So, and there's a ton of it. If you look at what's being built on just Ethereum per se, it has a lot of things going for it. It just has to get to that next level. Global payments and stablecoin. Jerry made a mention of this, and he's right. And then there's some upcoming upgrades. Dank sharding, I thought that was already implemented. And then Verkle trees apparently make things more stable, but higher scalability and lower gas costs. So that's fantastic. So remember, as far as like the ETF, the total is still in the positive, even though the last couple of days there's been some sell-offs. Yes, that is very true. But taking a look at cumulatively, things are looking pretty darn good. And then as far as like, you know, how much is the inflation? Well, it's a heck of a lot less than, say, I don't know, US dollar. Take a look at the time frame. Yeah, I know that was a good one. Take a look at the time frame here. We can see like over the last hour, I mean, 1 day is 0.79%, 7 days is 0.786%, 30 days is 0.75%, and 3 years and 49 days is is that right? 0.175%. So, I mean, in all things being equal, as far as like, it's not deflationary, but I mean, pretty darn close. And don't forget, we've got this nice little strategic ETH reserve, and only one company, morons, I can't say they're morons. I mean, they did what's best for their company. We're going to see that this reserve has just been going in the up and to the right type of section. So I like where things are going. Anyhow, that's the good news for ETH. And there's a lot of good things to see for other assets. But like Jerry talked about wisely, it's about who's going to get adopted, who's going to have the utility, and who's going to actually start using it. Jerry, what did I miss?
You didn't miss anything. The only thing that I would put out there from like a macro kind of thing, you know, try to keep understand where we are in the debt cycle. Understand how much money is owed, how much money needs to be refinanced because the term of the loan is due, right? Whether it be a 4-year, 5-year, 10-year, whatever it is. That information is relatively easy to find using a ChatGPT or a Perplexity, some nice LLM, because they're going to access various indicators to get that. But knowing the amount of debt that needs to be refinanced and what kind of debt it is, right? So are corporations going to borrow? They owe 900 million. Are they going to borrow $1 billion? And what are they going to do with that surplus 100 million, right? Are they going to buy their stock back? Maybe an interesting case to buy that company stock, because when stock gets bought back, it creates an appreciatory effect. Are they going to adopt a Bitcoin treasury asset strategy? Okay. Well, if that's the case, we know we've got a player who's going to buy $100 million worth of Bitcoin. You know what I mean? Try to understand what they're going to do with that money and then act accordingly. A lot of people, what my research is showing me, and I'm no expert in this, but I am a novelist, a hobbyist, there is a lot of debt that was taken out during the COVID era that will be coming due in the next 12 months.
12 months?
A lot of debt is going to be coming due. And you and I both know the rates to refinance today are at a completely different level than they were when refinancing was happening during 2020. Right? 2020, 2021.
You know what that reminds me of? Like we're talking about refinance of debt and we talk about extended cycles. Because people have been sending me the same thing, which is Berkshire Hathaway and the amount of cash that they have that they're accumulating as, you know, Warren Buffett's company. And we talked about this, actually, I think we talked about this yesterday as well, which was, you know, Warren Buffett's been and Berkshire Hathaway have been pretty much sidelining their cash for over a year now. And because they have so much and they're very patient, they think, and they could be right, recessions are coming, right? I think recessions are coming. It's inevitable. But the question is, are recessions coming in 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, 2 more years? See, somebody like Warren Buffett and Berkshire Hathaway, they can stay on the sidelines for years if they have to.
Yeah.
And if they just start accumulating all those funds and they have, you know, hundreds of billions of dollars just sitting there just waiting for it, they are going to crush it when we eventually do get the recession. But for people like us, do you want to sit out? Because them sitting out this last year, what'd they miss out on? Well, they missed out on an all-time high for stock markets. They missed out on an all-time massive rally for gold and precious metals. And of course, they've missed out on crypto. They've been missing out on crypto since the inception. So this whole time, as everybody's been just absolutely dominating, they've missed out on it to play that card a year to 2 years later. So I don't know if you're like that and you say, you know what, I'm just stacking until we crash. That's a pretty decent strategy. but how long can you wait around? I think that's the big thing. So that's what we got. Now, everybody, that was a nice little segue, I guess. But that will conclude for our super positive stream of what's happening in the market. Now let's do this. If you got to take off, take off. We appreciate you coming by. But if you want to stick around, we'll do a little Q&A. Me and Jerry, you can ask us any questions. We'll ask you some questions. And then we'll get out of here because it's Sunday and there's probably some football to watch. Right, Jerry?
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. So Linda says, hey, the major companies will develop their own blockchains. There are about 20 or so alts that will survive the next few years. Thoughts, Jerry?
I think she's right. I think we will see a compression. In other words, our market will shrink from the number of companies creating offerings, and those smaller number of companies in this ecosystem will have much larger market caps.
Yeah.
Just like you said, successful or companies that are getting traction will acquire ones that aren't, either for their talent or their tech, one or the other. You'll see a much smaller distribution of investable money. We're already seeing that, right? Fewer and fewer startups are having harder and harder times attracting capital.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Whereas 3 years ago, you could just say blockchain and an investor would write a check for 50 grand to give you a seed, here's some seed money. Go ahead, go build this thing.
Yeah. I think we're out. And you're right. You're right. It's the same thing as like .com. If you just put like LiptonIceTea.com, like, oh, this is the future. And that was a thing. But I don't know if everybody remembers in 2016, 2017, the ICO craze. You could have a white paper and a dream, and you were a billionaire.
And you got money from how many checks did Tim Draper write?
Way too many.
Holy tamale. No,
Yeah.
well, I think you need that. I think it's a healthy part of any new market growing and developing. And we're just getting to that point where we're not a dirty little secret anymore. We're not that. Remember, you talked about a macroeconomic factor being super important. Well, I can remember when we talked about how incredible it would be if we got regulatory clarity. Now, that's all taken for granted. We know we've got Bitcoin is safe, Ethereum is safe. These things are in our S&P 500. You can go to your 401k or you can go to your broker and buy Bitcoin ETF or Ethereum ETF. These things are we're no longer scared of getting them banned in the USA or illegal to deal with.
Yeah.
And it's just part of the maturation. The space is maturing, and maturer spaces have less room for wild exuberance.
This is true. And, to speak on Tim Draper, as great as he is, and he invested into some early startups like, an Uber, he went to the government auction, picked up some Bitcoin. He did great, right? But for every great one, there's a couple ones that are just horrible. And just remember that he's also was a big investor into Theranos, which was this scam company that was supposed to do laboratory testing that ended up being just a big Ponzi. So these things happen.
Elizabeth Holmes.
Yes, exactly.
The poster child for deceit.
Yeah, well, her and Sam Bankman-Fried. So like you have those things that are going on. So if you think about it, if you treat yourself as like, look, I'm an investor, really what you're thinking to yourself is these altcoins didn't work out. But if you're like, well, I'm an investor and just cut those losses, maybe you cut those losses. They just didn't work out. And that's what Tim Draper does. He puts out 10, so one or two can massively appreciate. And he's like, I did my job. That's it.
I was really, really, really bummed out when I was able to get a relatively small amount of money. I think I totally invested $53,000 total, and that turned into like $1 million, right? And this is the greatest thing in the world. And then as the market started to compress in 2022, I started to do some things and made some really bad decisions and ended up basically losing, 800,000 of it. And I was like, oh man, this is such a bummer. And then a buddy of mine, he said, listen, dude, you can write that off for the next 5 years. That is incredible. Why don't you just take your head out of your butt, get back into investing, and now all of a sudden, all those paper losses that you took, you'll be able to write off against real gains that you're going to take when you don't make the same mistake twice. Just invest. And so I took that advice from you, and I dollar cost average, and I'm building my portfolio back, sometimes $50 at a time, Rob. And you know what? It's all good, because every dollar of gain that I'm going to see for the rest of my foreseeable investing future, I will be able to take 100% of it, because I can write those losses off. So the moral of that story is, we're going to learn a lot of valuable lessons, learn them, take them in, and have them benefit you tomorrow, regardless of how painful they were yesterday.
No, this is true. This is the ones like the investors. It was Stanley Druckenmiller who says, yeah, as a long-term investor, you do your research, you invest, and then you sit around and do nothing for a long period of time. And usually those are the ones that do the best. Urban Centurion says, these are the days we see what we're made of. Think about that. Yep. And it's true. I remember in coronavirus time, March 2020, when we bottomed out, I want to say sub 5K Bitcoin, and alts were decimated 80, 90% plus. Everybody said, we're over. First of all, half the planet's going to get wiped out because CNBC told me that's what's going to happen. And that means that everybody's gone and nobody can invest. This is the worst thing of all time. And then things just changed on a dime when we started to print money, which we're going to be doing that again at some point. But I know it seemed like dark times, but yeah, you'll be just fine. Let's see. David says, companies making their own alts feel like it could turn into Chuck E. Cheese tokens. Useless, essentially.
Sort of, kind of.
Yeah. Let's see. Oh, Jim. Thank you, Jimmy. Don't forget the fundraiser for Amigos de los Animales. Everybody, if you would be so kind. If you like the entertainment that me and Jerry are providing today, there is a link in the description. There's a charity that I work with called Amigos de los Animales, and they rescue as many poor dogs in the streets of Puerto Rico. They're having a fundraiser today, and they're asking for donations. Anything helps. It could be $5 worth of Cardano. It could be, $20 that you can pay via PayPal. And I've got a lot of different links that you can put into whatever you're into. And if you want to just say, hey, here's a little bit of crypto, here's a little dollars, it'll go a long way. And of course, it helps poor animals that are just. You think you got it bad. Imagine getting hit on a car and then, on death's door. That's what I'm trying to say. Let's see. Shallon says, pretty sure we have a bot. Payne says, the big question is, does the 4-year cycle play out as normal and end Q4 2025? Or does it extend into Q1? This time is different. Well, yesterday we took a look at it. This time is different. There's a lot of different things that are looking, and we talked about those. But for us to extend in 2026, I'm still sticking to the November, December. We'll see what the indicators say. But if we do extend, it would make sense, though, especially with the way the economy is going and the instability. Jared, I don't think I've ever gotten your opinion on this one. Q4 or Q1, Q2 of next year?
Well, I think it's important to understand what I think the 4-year cycle is based on. So when I give my answer, you can compare and contrast. I believe that the 4-year cycle in crypto was built upon a halving cycle for Bitcoin. And that macro event of supply and demand radically changing, at least the supply side, as we continue to have, relatively steady growth on the demand side, was the major factor of that 4-year cycle, and what all of these other expectations have been built upon. I think the market is changing, and although supply and demand is a major contributor specifically to the Bitcoin market, I think we're getting to a point where you're going to see you're going to see that dynamic change. And the reason you're going to see the dynamic change is the participants in the market are changing.
Yeah.
larger and larger pools of capital are coming to this market. It's not a retail guy like Jerry bringing his $53,000 to this market. We're talking about one participant bringing hundreds of millions of dollars to this market. You know, it's a completely different game now that we're playing. And so I think that will change. I think the whole world will have a completely different understanding of these cycles over the next 2 years as the market participant really roll into more sophisticated, better financed, capitalized entities, whether they be businesses or governments or what have you.
I always think it was like in the beginning, I always thought it was just based on the halving, but then I take a look at it and it's amazing how much it coincides with the presidential election sequence, which is every 4 years. So check this. I mean, think of it this way. In 2024 is the halving. Every 4 years is the halving year. Going back from 2024 was a halving year. 2020 was a halving year. 2016 was a halving year. 2012. What is the same thing that goes on? A United States presidential election. What do the markets not like? Ambiguity. They don't know. They don't like any kind of unknowns. And then 2 years after the halving, what do you have after the halving? You have a blow off top usually. And then the year after that, you have a big, huge slump. What happens 2 years after every presidential election? Midterm elections. And what the markets don't like is ambiguity. They're like, okay, who's going to take over Congress? Who's going to be leading Senate? Who's going to be leading the House of Representatives? And is the administration going to actually be gridlocked and all the things they have to do because the other party gets voted in? So I think there's like that. And then, of course, people say, well, the business cycle and the bonds. And I'm like, yeah, sure, okay. All that stuff all plays into it. But I think it really, like Jerry said, I mean, there is a factor of saying, hey, here's a halving. You're doing the exact same amount of work, you're getting half the pay. Okay. And nobody really likes that. But it is good for finite supplies, not scarcity. All right. This is a question for both of us. JB says, really, it's Rob, Jerry. Have you completely given up on Cardano? Jerry, what you got?
No, I haven't at all. I have, though, just recently stopped my dollar cost averaging into Cardano. I'm just allowing my yield to compound in my staking wallet.
Yeah.
But no, of course not. We don't know. Okay. We're at that stage where blockchain is established itself as a legitimate technology for efficiency. Nobody can argue that. Nobody. All right. Yeah. But we're not at that place where we know that Samsung and Apple are the predominant device manufacturers for smartphones. So we're in that in between, right? We know smartphone technology isn't going away.
True.
But we don't know who the two dominant companies on the planet will be. We don't know that yet. And so we're at that in between. We're at that where Motorola is still fighting with Nokia, fighting with this, fighting with that, you know, H5 and all these different, they're boxing, they're fighting it out. And until that happens, I'm not giving up on any of those layer ones that I have, because there's a chance that somebody will build something that reaches 1 billion people and it will become a standard of the world. Just like Android is a standard, iOS is a standard. These are things that will be ubiquitous in our exchange of what we do and how we do things.
Yeah, exactly. And well said.
Cardano, heck no.
Yeah. So and then for me on the same thing, do I give up on Cardano? I give up on no projects per se, unless you're like Luna. Because hey, that just went to zero.
Give up on Luna.
Yeah, but if you take a look at like the things that I've gotten into, I always, every time like I have turned my back onto something, that's when it blows up, and we just never know what's going to go on in the background. I will say one thing about Cardano: they do have a pretty sizable war chest to actually put funds into it and do a lot of things to progress what it's doing. But there's like some kind of like disconnect between the foundation and what I think the people actually want. And one of the things that I think they failed on was buying into and working together with the stablecoin. I think it was Circle and USDC. Correct me in the comment section. And yes, you got to have a pay to play type of thing. But guess what? How much farther could they have gone just doing that? I know people say, well, there is a stable coin on Cardano. Look at the volume. And you'll see why you should have done the pay to play type of thing. Anyhow, that was just my 2 cents, and I'm not giving up on it, and hopefully it works out, and we'll go from there. Let's see. Darth Mike says, I don't think Warren Buffett has years to go to accumulate. Look, Warren Buffett I think is over 90, but Berkshire Hathaway I think is going to be around quite some time. Question for Jerry. Jerry, what's the safest stable coin to hold the year after the altcoin run? So I don't have to use a bank for a stable coin. What's your thoughts on that?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I don't think you can go, although I don't like the fee structure involved, I don't think you can go wrong with USDC or USDT on Ethereum.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I don't think they're going anywhere. That's the point of the conversation. There's so much liquidity. I don't think they're going anywhere. And isn't it amazing, Rob, that we're actually talking about a USDT or USDC on different chains? Like there's now all of a sudden different. Folks, there was a time where that was all there was. It was on Ethereum, and that was it.
That was it.
USDT, you had Tether on Ethereum, and that was it. And then Paxos came around with something, but nobody used it, and
Yeah.
Remember those days?
I remember. Well, I remember PaxG. I would just say like this, like for me, I have a hard time, like I talk about stable coins as far as like payments, but to keep my like life savings on stables, I just feel very uncomfortable. And the reason why is because, and you've seen this before, just know that stable coins are not central bank digital currencies. They're by private companies, but those private companies can shut you off. And they can reverse transactions, and they have done it in the past. And that's Circle and Tether.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to follow my rules. And very first one, don't invest more than you can afford to lose. And if I'm going to put into stables, which is easy to get in and out, but just remember, those people can flip the script on you very quickly. I'm not going to be that guy to put everything in there. Will I put some? Yes. Will I put all? No. Okay. A couple more questions, and then Jerry can get out of here and start screaming at the television screen for who's playing today, Jerry. Anybody good?
Everybody. It's Sunday.
Well, yeah. Who's your team today?
No, I'm in a fantasy. You and I are both in a fantasy football league, so I root for players now, not necessarily a specific team.
That's the way to do it. You degen. Let's see. Oh wow, Coinbase.
And I'm the degen.
Yeah, exactly. You got to give that. You got to give that stuff up, Jerry. You got to go to Fartcoin. Coinbase USD 3.85% APY. That's pretty good. Hey, did you see that MEX? I don't know what's going on with MEXC, the exchange. I'm not here to FUD it or anything, but remember the rules. If you're going to use an exchange, you treat it like a gas station bathroom. Get in, do your business, and get out.
Exactly.
But they had like some.
I couldn't agree more. Matter of fact, there's something maybe we can bring this next week. There's a lot of efficacy to having relationships with multiple exchanges, especially in times of heavy activity, right?
Yes, right.
And especially when you start deviating from coins that aren't necessarily Bitcoin or Ethereum, right? Different exchanges may have different liquidity profiles for different coin pools, right?
Yeah.
You may, if you're holding a whole bunch of X coin and Coinbase doesn't have a whole bunch of X coin, it doesn't matter what the price of X coin is. If you can't find a buyer, it doesn't get sold. It's not a store, it's an exchange. And so understand which of these exchanges have liquidity in the assets that you hold and have a plan when it comes time to execute.
When you have one at a time to execute, the big thing. Sorry, I was looking through this one. Shaolin says, why don't you believe it? I'm a Bitcoin miner in a company. I see the numbers every day. You want to believe Senator Warren over a guy who works in the industry? I don't know what this is talking about. This looks good. This could be the whole show. Let's see. Could someone bring me up to speed? I can't find the back and forth. First of all, Elizabeth Warren, as I call her, crypto Karen, she's never going to come around to our way of thinking. She dislikes us. She thinks that this is all used for cartels and terrorism, and it should all go down. I don't get it myself.
I think she'll like whoever supports her campaign for re-election.
Well, I think the Coinbase should go to her. Hey, you want some money? No, that's not how things work in America, Jerry. I'm just kidding. That's exactly how it works. Let's see. You never know. Trade on chain. I think that's it. I think we. Okay.
You think the audience wants to get to their recliner and turn on NFL Red Zone?
I think so. I'm going to leave it here. Lone Wolf said it right. Remember, I love you all. Stay positive and stack sats. Not financial advice. Just don't get shook. And that's the best thing we can do for everybody. Thanks so much for, yeah. Jerry, thanks for stopping by, man. I appreciate every Sunday doing this. But that's it for today. You can follow Jerry. Links in the description. Also, if you want to give to the shelter, that would be much appreciated. But that's it for this one. We will see you guys next Sunday. Thanks so much. And adios.